Welcome to Each Fridays. My name is Guy Bartram. I'm Director of Product Marketing for our cloud providers, and joined again by Jay. Thanks for joining, Jay. Do you want to give everyone a brief introduction?
Sure. Thanks, Guy. Hello, everyone. My name is Jay, and I'm a Senior Technical Product Marketing Manager with the CIBG team at VMware, and I mostly handle the VMware Cloud Director Service, go-to-market, and extensibility around that.
Excellent. Thanks, Jay. And yeah, you've been doing a fantastic job on Cloud Director. So pleased to have you providing the technical and marketing coverage on that. And we're here to talk about 10.4.1, which came out in December.
Yeah.
This is a dot release, but it's got quite a lot of capability in it.
Correct. It is a dot release. Basically, it's the first minor release after the previous major release, and there would be another minor release after the next major release. So though it's a minor release, basically we call it a dot release. It has quite a few capabilities, and we have kind of introduced few new cool features. So yeah, we'll talk through them as we move on to the slides.
Okay, well, it's a big topic, so it's going to be mostly, it's all slides today. Yeah. We will look at diving into a few of the optional areas in the future. But it's too much for one Feature Friday, so yeah, let's cover it all in slides if that's okay. Do you want to start sharing, Jay?
Sure. All right. So as we know, we will be talking about VCD 10.4.1 release and what's in this release. So from the agenda perspective, we will look at the release highlights, how, in what category, what kind of components and features we have introduced, we have enhanced, and then looking at each category, we have basically three categories. We will dive into the networking and load balancing section, and then we will look at some of the operational improvements, and then look at the core platform. Very important thing, we will look at the interoperability and upgrades, and then we will then kind of close the video. So from the technical overview perspective, right, from what's in this release, with the networking enhancements from an NSX perspective, we are introducing two features. One is the IP space. Basically, we'll talk about it in a little detail in the coming slide, but we're introducing IP space, and then we're introducing the concept of connecting your external network to an edge gateway, which was not possible before. So basically, these two features are introduced in order to cover the gap what we had between NSX-V and NSX-T, since we are almost migrating all the cloud providers from V to T, right? So we need to somehow be sure that we have the capabilities what was possible in V, and now it should be also possible in T, NSX-T.
Yeah.
And from the advanced load balancer perspective, we are introducing, or rather enhancing the load balancing mechanism by introducing the transparent load balancing. And also we will be going forward tagging the security edge gateway feature set, which was introduced in the previous version based on what feature of the heavy load balancer is used by a specific customer. So why we need this and all the stuff we will see as we move forward. And from an operational perspective, we have quite a few UI visibility changes, like, for example, when we deploy a vApp template, or rather when we instantiate a catalog and deploy vApp template from that, how the networking option has been enhanced. That's one UI change. Basically, I'm talking about the major UI changes. And then we also now show the transfer speed when we sync the catalogs between the catalogs, show overall progress of the task, and the other change which was previously heavily used by customers, that we now no more have the option to use the legacy console. Previously, we had it as an option. Since we moved since we moved to HTTP only, now there would be no feature flag for legacy console as well.
Okay.
From the operational improvements, we have service account, which now supports multi-site. We have spoken about service account separately in a dedicated video. Now we are adding the capability of multi-site to it. And then we are introducing the solutions add-on management. We'll talk about it more. And then we are talking about, and now we're introducing a very cool feature called UI branding and theming. This was only possible through API before, which was very complex, but now we are introducing this completely from a UI perspective. You would have a dedicated video on this from a Feature Friday perspective. And then we are introducing the option for UEFI boot for virtual machines. And we basically, I would call it, we are announcing the deprecation of local users from VCD. Why? We'll talk about it later.
Okay.
And from a core platform perspective, we have some security improvements, like we have the format change for Open API certificate, and the embedded database is now upgraded to version 14 of Postgres. And then, of course, we have some enhanced security within the database as well. From a supportability perspective, we now support vSphere 8.0, NSX 4.0.1. And please note that we would stop supporting vSphere and ESXi version 6.7 and any versions before that. So if anyone is around that version of vSphere and vCenter, before upgrading to VCD 10.4.1, make sure that you have your vCenter and or rather the vSphere environment in the supportability metrics.
Yeah.
So from a networking perspective, like we saw, we will dive into IP space. So this feature was a big ask and a big task from the engineering perspective to integrate it within VMware Cloud Director solution. So this feature is basically a concept where the service provider have now the capability to control and manage their IP addresses in a better way. Previously, there was no mechanism by which the service provider could actually know which IP address is assigned to which tenant, what's the usage, how are they managing, which one is a floating IP address, which is a fixed IP address, nothing. So with this feature, we are now introducing the concept of IP space, where we can create separate scopes for individual customers. And we can also then define the IP prefixes, which needs to be assigned to a specific customer. And in that way, the service provider will know that these set of scope of IPs are assigned to, let's say, tenant A, this set of scope of IPs assigned to tenant B, and so on. So in this way, the major challenge which they would overcome is that they would avoid any overlapping IP addresses configuration, which used to happen in the previous case. And of course, we have a better way of managing IP addresses to look at the usage of each tenant, who is using how many IP addresses, and if in case they need more, or for example, you can also configure floating IP addresses, or also you can configure some fixed IP addresses through the IP space feature. So this option can be configured from the provider portal. And once you try to configure it from the provider portal, or it is also possible from tenant portal as an administrator, system administrator, there are three types of IP spaces, basically public, shared, and private. Private is obviously basically dedicated to the specific tenant. Mm-hmm. Public is you would want to use that from a service provider perspective to have your, let's say you have some configuration for each tenant and you need an IP address for each configuration from a tenant perspective, but the usage is from the provider perspective. So in that case, you would use a public IP space, and if it is shared, it can be shared between your respective tenants. So this is the main concept of IP space. This is a very, very complex topic and enhanced topic. For sure, this topic can have its dedicated technical deep dive, which can go in hours. So this is all about IP space from this video perspective.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. I mean, previously it was a little bit hard for service providers to understand and keep an eye on kind of which IP ranges were being used by which tenants. And
correct.
This is going to make it so much easier for them to manage the IP ranges.
It will, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to the next feature, which is now that you would be able to attach an external edge network to the edge gateway. This was not possible before. So basically, when you go to when you navigate to the edge gateway, now, if in case you have multiple external networks, all of those external networks can be managed or rather attached to the edge gateway. So why this was introduced? Now, we all know that edge gateway is mostly dedicated or shared, and if it's dedicated, it's for a respective tenant. Now, tenants have many networks to, or rather, I would say tenants have many reasons to attach many more networks which are not in the same network, right?
Yeah.
So in that way, if you attach the external network to the edge gateway, now tenants have the direct route to reach to the external network and perform the activities they want to. So each edge gateway can have multiple external network. And of course, when we attach the external network to the edge gateway, that specific network scope IP will be attached to the uplink of the edge gateway, and that will allow the the tenant to route traffic as and when they want through the respective IP route or the respective channel which is attached to the edge gateway. So this was a big ask and a big thing which was missing previously, but now we were able to solve the problem and then kind of introduce this in this version.
Jay, how does that differ from what was used kind of previously? Was it, I think, the VRF functions?
Previously, in case if a tenant wanted to achieve the same category, yes, one is they had to go through multiple VRFs for which they had to obviously contact the service provider, and of course they had to do a lot of routing and natting to kind of go outside the network, because they used to have one dedicated external network, and all the traffic with, let's say if my tenant has multiple network scopes, right, all had to go through routing and natting through this one channel. But now we have the option to attach multiple networks, and they can have the connections directly from a tenant perspective. So that allows them, it eases their job and eases their network configuration basically.
I mean, it seems like kind of crazy it wasn't there before. I know it was an NSX limitation, but it's really great to see this now, nice and simple.
It actually, you're right, you rightly said, it's nice and simple, achieving the same task which was possible before it was like not very complex, but not straightforward. Now it is straightforward. And now we have introduced a new feature by which we can now tag the security edge gateway based on the feature set used by the specific tenant. To give you a background, in the previous version, we have introduced, rather in the previous version, we have kind of redesigned how the heavy load balancer licensing would function from a BCD perspective. And we have introduced something called feature set, which is basically the standard premium set or your enterprise premium set. So based on the feature type, what the tenant wants to use, the customer could, the service provider could enable the feature set on the security edge gateway, and accordingly the number of features would be available to the customers. Now, why do we need this tagging option? If you look at it from a monitoring perspective and usage meter perspective, it was difficult to know which customer is using what feature set. So to bridge that gap, we are now allowing BCD 10.4.1 to automatically tag the security edge gateway with the feature set which is assigned or configured on the security edge gateway. So let's say if a security edge gateway has a feature set enterprise, BCD will automatically tag that edge gateway to enterprise tag, and usage meter can understand that while metering for this specific feature. In the future, this tagging will also help the chargeback to meter or bill the customer accordingly based on the tagging mechanism.
I was going to say, so today this is just for usage meters, so we can understand what versions of advanced load balancing are being used by the provider. But the other thing, flip side of that, is obviously the provider wants to charge the tenant for those, additional features of enterprise.
So that's a work in progress, and probably in the next release of chargeback, hopefully we may have that capability available.
Cool.
And this JSON is a sample which automatically is set by the cloud director upon once we create a feature, once we create the security edge gateway, which is a respective feature set, it'll basically run, or rather tag this command to tag the security edge gateway and store that in the database.
Which database, Jay? Is that going to be in vCenter or in?
It is going to be in BCD database.
BCD, okay.
Yes. Okay, so from some technical updates from an operational improvements perspective, We have seen service account introduced in the previous version. So just to give you a background, service account is the capability basically to allow any of the non-human access to VCD. Basically, let's say any third-party API tool. So service account allows us to not use any user accounts and have dedicated service account which will authenticate the third-party tools to talk to VCD to perform certain tasks. It has its own set of processes which can be seen or which we have spoken about in a different video. But what we're introducing in this version is that now service account supports multi-site. What do you mean by that? Let's say we have two sites, and let's say the third-party tool I'm trying to run to connect to these multi-sites. Obviously, right, we need to have a single account to connect to both the sites. It was not possible before, but now it is. But now the service account allows it to talk to both the sites. The only thing is, let's say, for example, as you see on the screen, I create user 1 for service account on, let's say, service account 1 on site 1, it will generate a software ID. Okay. Now you have to make sure that while I'm creating a service account user on the site 2, I have to make sure that the same software ID is being used so that both the users are tagged to the same software ID across sites, and the tool which we are using to authenticate the multi-site VCD setup understands that it is a single site. I mean, it's a single pane of glass and multi-site, and it will authenticate the user accordingly.
Is that something that happens automatically? The software ID is replicated across, or is that something that you have to sort of cut and paste into the different?
You have to cut and paste. So the first time when you create the user ID, the service account ID on site 1, you have a button to generate a software ID. On site 2, it's a copy paste which you have to do, and then you have to kind of create the service account on site 2 manually using the software ID, the existing software ID.
Got it.
And we are now introducing something called solutions add-on management. This is a very nice feature, to be honest. So what does it do? So before I say what does it do, let's say, for example, if I want to set up a CAC environment in my lab or in my setup, what would I do? I have to have a virtual machine, deploy CAC on that, install CAC on that, configure CAC, come to VCD, install the plugin, enable the plugin, and do a lot of stuff. Imagine if I have 30 sites. It can be a little tough, and it can be, there could be a situation where I can, as a human, you can do mistakes, right? So what this allows us is basically to automate all of this process into a management pack kind of a thing, right? So basically in this, you have to have your scripts ready, wherein you can write all the information that you need to have a VM with this software, do this configuration, do this plugin enablement, do this configuration within VCD. You can create a package and upload that to VCD under solutions add-on management. So going forward, you can use the same package across your different environment and deploy the setup. In this way, you're easing your process of complex deployments and multiple times deploying the same thing. So in that way, so basically what they call here is a landing zone. Create one landing zone and use a landing zone across your environment to do the same configuration. So it's a nice add-on for users who use a lot of extensibility with VCD. So it will allow them to basically add the functionality through a single click.
Okay. How's that work? I mean, if you're deploying, like your example, CSE.
So I'll tell you. So there's something called landing zone. So once you have a landing zone created, so what goes behind landing zone? Landing zone is basically my boundary. What boundary? I'm saying that, okay, use this OBDC, use this network, use this network, use this storage policy. And then what I would do is, basically I'm defining my resources in landing zone. Okay. Then what I have to do is I have to have my script ready and then upload that in an ISO format within VCD. So what will happen that BCD will now that ISO will be available in the form the ISO will be available in the UI portal to be able to use. So once I click on that ISO and attach that ISO to the landing zone, so it knows that I have to run this script on this OVDC using this network, using this storage policy, right? So what it will do, it will spin up a virtual machine for me, and based on the script, it will pull the binaries, install the binaries, and do all the configuration. And then obviously on the VCD side, depending on what's there in my script, it'll do all the configuration and make things, or rather make the environment available for you with a single click. Yes, the initial part of getting it uploaded to the add-on management pack is a little complex. When I say complex, you have to have the scripting done. But once you have that done, going forward, it's a single click. Once you click on this, all the action in the script happens in the background. That's how it works.
Yeah, so it's using a manifest YAML file.
It is, yeah, it is using a manifest YAML file, which basically has the intelligence.
Okay, and how that's the question, is like, how do you create that manifest YAML?
Oh, that's basically, I mean, of course, you have, like, say, for example, when I'm configuring my Kubernetes environment, right? I have my manifest file, correct?
Yeah.
I have, it's a similar way. You have to start writing a manifest file in a way where you kind of deploy, let's say you have all those, it's a coding technology, right? So you basically mention your resources, which VM, which template to use, from where to pull, which landing zone to use, blah, blah, blah. And then it's a file, you upload it, and then you use that as your add-on management.
Yeah, my question was, there's no kind of facility for you to generate a manifest file. You actually have to create it yourself.
You have to create is what I understand. Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So very, very nice feature for customers who have a lot of add-ons with VCD. And it can ease their process once they have this add-on added to their VCD environment.
Sure.
And we're introducing some UI branding and theming capabilities with this version. History, just to give a little history, previously it was all possible through API, and it was a very, very complex. But thanks to our engineering team who have made it possible to make this branding and theming feature very, very, how much ever complex it was before, that much easy it is now. And the best part is it is immediate. I mean, you don't have to wait for a couple of minutes for it to show up in the environment. It's immediate. So basically now from the UI, you can brand your tenant portal, and you can basically brand each of a tenant with different themes. So when you create a theme, you have the option to choose the color of your choice. You have the option to use the logo and the images of your choice, and you have the option to edit the existing links, add new links, and other items. So these are the options you can do. And then from a branding and theming UI experience, you can clone a theme, you can export a theme, you can import a theme, you can assign that theme to any of the tenants, multiple tenants, you can unassign it, you can also make it as a default. All those things is possible from the new branding and theming experience. And for those of you who already had the themes created in the previous version, this UI also allows, this enhanced UI also allows you to convert or deploy a theme from that theme in the new version. So if you had a theme previously created, this tool detects those themes, and it will allow you to use that theme as a base to create a new theme out of it. So it's a very, very nice thing that so for those of you have themes created before, it will allow you to use the existing theme as it is, with more customization option enabled for it.
Yeah, this is a really cool feature if you're a service provider who delivers infrastructure with Cloud Director, but your primary customers are actually other service providers or partners. They can then brand their instance of their portal, and you give them controls to do that as well, which is fantastic. So as of now, this is only a service provider feature, and you can there is no limit to create any themes. You can just create themes. And also one more thing, you can apply the theme to the service provider portal also. So you can also customize your service provider portal as well. So it's possible both ways, tenant and provider.
And now we support the UEFI boot. Basically, I don't have to explain this. It is basically to increase your security. And the only thing you have to consider is that if you want to use this feature, of course, you must have VCD 10.4.1 plus you must have the EFI firmware thing on your hardware, and the virtual hardware version must be 13 and above. And of course, the operating system must support the UEFI secure boot. So if that's the case, yes, please, when you're deploying a virtual machine, you have the option to select either BIOS or EFI. And also remember, when you convert this VM to a template and redeploy it, all the UEFI function works as it is, as we deploy a new virtual machine. So it functions when you clone it, when you add to template, etc. And then we're announcing deprecation of local users. Basically, after a while, maybe a year or two, we would completely stop supporting having local users on VMware Cloud Director for various reasons. Because, of course, one, we have no control over what's the password policy complexity. We have no control over password policy changes. Local users cannot be authenticated through multi-factor authentication. You cannot have any other biometrics attached to it, etc. So that's the main reason of moving away from local users to completely an identity provider user. So it's still something which will work, but as a VCD from VMware's perspective or from VCD's perspective, we recommend or we encourage that going forward, do not use or do not create local users. Start gradually moving on to your LDAP users. So in case you have local users and a lot of objects attached to that user, we do have the option to migrate those users to all of the available identity providers. With VCD, we have, as you know, we support SAML, LDAP, and OIDC. And if any of these or all of these are already added in your environment, you can use APIs to migrate your local user to any of these identity providers.
Hey, Jay, does that count as well for service management accounts?
Service accounts, no.
Yeah, no, they're all local, right?
Just local user, because for service account we already have a tight security mechanism, which in which we have control of how we can use the service accounts and how we cannot. Yeah. But with local users, we have no control basically.
Yeah.
So that's the reason. Again, it's still an announcement, but gradually we will deprecate this completely after a couple of releases.
Yeah.
And right now it's an API feature where you can migrate from local to any of your identity available user. And from vApp template instantiation perspective, we have enhanced the UI. Basically, the screenshot which you see in the background, the first screenshot, that's the new addition, wherein now you can, while deploying a vApp from the template, you have the option to add static pool, configure VM networking, give the gateway CIDR. It was not possible before. Previously, you did not have the first screen. It was only the second screen where you could just select the network type, the IP assignment type, and the network, but you could not define the IP addresses upfront. But now you have the option to do that as well.
Okay.
And other UI enhancements quickly. Now you can see the transfer speed when the catalog is syncing between publisher and the subscriber, and the overall progress of task in the subtask is now seen. And as I mentioned in the starting of this video, we now do not support completely. We do not support the legacy console proxy, and you would not find the feature flag for that in the feature flag section.
It's taken a long while to get rid of the legacy console, isn't it?
But finally, we have done it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's done at last.
It was a tedious task to have a separate certificate mechanism for your console proxy, separate mechanism for other things. So now it's all HTTP, so which is good. And from the core platform perspective, this is all security enhancement. We have the embedded database is now upgraded to PostgreSQL 14, and of course it has some enhanced security, and the open API certificate format has changed. This is just an FYI, but these are from a security perspective. And very important to know, from a supportability perspective, we support vSphere 8.0, NSX 4.0.1. This is a new addition. And like I mentioned in the beginning, we are deprecating the support of vSphere 6.7 and any below versions with this release. So like I said earlier, before you upgrade your VCD environment to 10.4.1, you have to make sure that your vSphere environment is 6.7 and above, sorry, 6.7 above only, not even 6.7. And of course, you have to look at the other interoperability items to check before you upgrade to VCD 10.4.1.
Of course, if you use a cloud provider lifecycle manager, then you won't have that issue because it will go and do all the checks for you.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. But that's right. But for someone who's not using, make sure that you are checking these boxes before you upgrade.
Yeah.
And these are the interoperability and interoperability. Basically, this is all the solution endpoint and the versions we support. Okay, I would not say we support. These are the versions which are tested with 10.4.1, which means if we have tested, we will support it. I mean, there are previous versions as well of some of the products which still work, but it has not been tested. So whatever versions you're seeing right now on the screen are tried and tested with 10.4.1 from each of the product perspective.
Jay, is Cloud Director availability 4.5 supported with 10.4.1?
Cloud Director availability 4.5, yes.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, and of course, just made me think because the HCX components is not supported, so your migration path is using Cloud Director availability.
I was about to say that. If you look here, HCX is still not supported. So that's where you would use the Cloud Director availability 4.5 to do all the migration and the other availability options. So these are some of the extensibility, interoperability from the adapter perspective or from object storage extension, CSE, app launchpad, chargeback, Terraform, etc. Again, these are the tested version with 10.4.1.
And if anyone's migrating with NSX using the migrating tool, I guess that's not supported in 10.4.1 because of the IP space enhancements. You've got to wait for the tool to be updated.
I think I have mentioned here, NSX migration is not supported. Yes, that's because of the new enhancements we have made with this release. That is still not understandable by the migration tool, but I'm sure this gap would be filled very soon because, of course, the NSX migration tool is a different tool by itself and not dependent on VCD's code. So I'm sure the team is working towards it, and we'll get the migration tool available to you as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And from an upgrade path, literally we support upgrading the appliance from 9.7 to 10.4.1. But again, it's not a straight upgrade. Log into the interoperability and upgrade interoperability guide online and check the upgrade path. In case you're running 9.7, you have multiple steps to hop before you can reach to 10.4.1. So, and if you are using a Linux-based VCD, we support upgrading only from version 10.2 to 10.4.1.
Okay.
And we have introduced a new API version with this release, which is 3.7.1. And previously with 10.4, we had introduced 37 version. Now we're introducing 37.1, and the rest remains the same. And sizing guidelines, it remains the same as it was in 10.4. We have small, medium, large, and extra large, and accordingly you have the resources assigned to them from a configuration perspective. That's it. So this is all about the enhancements and new features we have introduced in VCD 10.4.1. Though we say it's a dot release, still there are quite a good features and good enhancements made. So from that perspective, I would say it's more than a dot release, but yeah, good to know that we have how VCD is evolving as a product, and we're introducing so many nice features, and we are trying to make sure that the service provider's job is kind of eased by enhancing the feature wherever applicable and possible.
Yeah, and there's a lot here, and to me, it looks like 10.4.1 is providing some significant value in the networking space, some more robust security. It's getting rid of local users, that type of thing. It's
correct.
It's kind of should have been done a long time ago, so it's good to see.
Right.
And yeah, I think for those providers out there, I think the main thing is getting to vSphere 8, right? Because there's still a lot of people on vSphere 7.
Right.
So that's probably going to be one of the key factors in deciding whether to migrate or not.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like I said, this version of release is mostly provider centric, where we have more service provider level features. So yeah, I'm sure we'll have more happy service provider faces, and then we would have lesser queries, and they would have lesser problems to deal with. Yeah,
brilliant. Jay, thank you very much for your time today. It's been great to walk through the new features with 10.4.1. Thank you.
No worries, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yes, bye-bye.